Welcome to Trending Update USA. I am Steffan, and today we are going to have a conversation that has been brewing in women's tennis for a very long time. It is not about one match. It is not about one tournament. It is about something much bigger. It is about the moment when a rivalry stops being one-sided and becomes genuinely dangerous. So here is the question I want us to think about today. For years, Iga Świątek has dominated women's tennis with a level of consistency that reminded many of us of the Serena Williams era. 6 Grand Slam titles. A former world number one. A player who, at her peak, would go on winning streaks that seemed almost unfair. And for most of that time, one name kept appearing on the other side of the net, losing again and again, and that name was Coco Gauff. But something has changed. And it has changed dramatically. Coco Gauff has now beaten Iga Świątek 4 consecutive times. All in straight sets. The last of those came at the 2026 United Cup in Sydney, where Gauff dismantled Świątek 6-4, 6-2. And that brought their overall head-to-head record from a staggering 11-1 in Świątek's favor down to 11-5. Still lopsided on paper, sure. But the momentum, the energy, the psychology of this rivalry has shifted completely. And that is what I want to talk about today, not just the numbers, but what this shift means, why it matters, and what it tells us about the pressure, the scrutiny, and the human cost of being a top athlete in the modern era. Let us start with the facts, and then we will go deeper. For context, Iga Świątek built her 11-1 lead over Gauff across a span of matches from 2021 to mid-2024. These were not close encounters. Most of them were one-sided affairs. Gauff herself has talked about this openly. She described walking onto the court against Świątek already carrying what she called a mental deficit. Think about what that means. Before the first ball was even struck, Gauff felt she was already behind. That is not a tactical problem. That is not a physical problem. That is a psychological wall, and those are the hardest walls in sport to break through. The turning point came at the 2024 WTA Finals in Saudi Arabia. Gauff won that match in straight sets, and she has described it as the moment everything clicked. She said once she got that first real win, she was able to erase the other matches from her mind. She stopped thinking about the overall record and started thinking about the next point. And since that breakthrough, she has not lost to Świątek. Not once. For matches, for wins, 0 sets dropped. Now, at the United Cup in January 2026, Gauff was clinical. She was sharp from the start, she took her chances, and she controlled the rallies. When asked about the match, she was measured and confident. She said, and I quote, "I didn't let the opportunities that I had on the first 2 match points get away from me." She played well. But I knew how I was playing the whole match that I'd get it done. That is not arrogance. That is the language of a player who has arrived. Świątek, to her credit, was equally composed. She acknowledged the shift. She said Gauff has improved, that it is quite visible, and that the matches they played a couple of years ago were one-sided compared to what they are now. She offered congratulations and admitted the rivalry has evolved. And that is an important detail, because it tells us Świątek is aware of what is happening. She is not dismissing it. She is processing it. And that in itself tells you this is real. But here is where we move beyond the scoreboard. Because what is happening between Gauff and Świątek is not just about tennis technique or match strategy. It is about something deeper. It is about how modern athletes cope with the extraordinary psychological pressure of competing at the highest level, while being watched every single second of their lives. And I mean every single second. At the 2026 Australian Open, both Gauff and Świątek were eliminated in the quarterfinals. Gauff lost to Elena Svitolina. Świątek lost to Elena Rybakina. Those are tough results, no question. But what happened after Gauff's loss became a much bigger story than the loss itself. Gauff, understandably frustrated, tried to find a private space away from the court to let out her emotions. She smashed her racket into the concrete floor of a ramp near the players' area. She did it 7 times. She did not do it on the court. She specifically walked away from the fans and the cameras because she did not want to set a bad example. She was trying to handle a deeply human moment of frustration in private. Except there was no private space. The cameras were everywhere. The clip went viral instantly. It was broadcast on television, shared across social media, clipped, memed, and debated by millions of people around the world. A 21-year-old woman could not even have a private emotional reaction to a painful defeat without it becoming global content. And this is where I want us to pause and really think about what we are doing to these athletes. Gauff spoke about it in her press conference afterward. She said, "Maybe some conversations can be had, because I feel like, at this tournament, the only private place we have is the locker room." Think about that statement. The only private place. The locker room. That is it. Everywhere else, cameras follow them from the moment they arrive to the moment they leave. And it was not just Gauff who spoke up. Świątek echoed those concerns the very next day. And what she said was powerful. She asked, and I am quoting directly, "Are we tennis players or are we animals in the zoo where they are observed even when they poop?" She apologized for the bluntness of the comparison, but the point was sharp and it was valid. She said it would be nice to have some privacy, to have a space where you can go through your own process without always being observed. Jessica Pegula backed Gauff as well. She confirmed that the only time players are not being recorded is when they are in the shower or the bathroom. She called the camera coverage very intrusive, and said it seemed worse than previous years. Even Novak Djokovic weighed in. He said it was sad that a player cannot find anywhere to hide and vent frustration without being captured by a camera. But he was also realistic. He said we live in a society where content is everything, and he doubted the trend would change. If anything, he expected even more cameras in the future. Amanda Anisimova made perhaps the most thoughtful comment. She said, "There are good moments that people see and that's fun. Then, when you lose, there are probably not so good moments. The fact that the video of Coco was posted, it's tough, because she didn't have a say in that. She did not have a say in that. Let that sink in. A person's lowest emotional moment was captured without her consent, broadcast without her permission, and consumed as entertainment by millions. And we just accept this as normal because they are athletes, and they are public figures." Now I want to connect this back to the Gauff Świątek rivalry, because I think it matters. When we talk about the shift in their head-to-head, when we talk about Gauff finally overcoming the mental deficit and winning 4 in a row, we are talking about something incredibly fragile. We are talking about the confidence and mental clarity of a young woman who has been in the public eye since she was 15 years old. Gauff burst onto the scene at Wimbledon in 2019 as a teenager. She is now 21. She has won 2 Grand Slam titles, the 2023 US Open and the 2025 French Open. She has won the WTA Finals. She has 11 career singles titles. She is currently ranked world number 4. By any measure, her career trajectory is remarkable. But let us not pretend this comes without cost. Gauff has spoken openly about the mental toll. She cried during a match at the 2025 US Open and later described it as the worst I ever felt on a tennis court, attributing it to pressure and nerves. She has had to clarify comments on social media after clips were taken out of context at the United Cup. She has been criticized for showing emotion, praised for showing emotion, analyzed for showing emotion, and everything in between. Every facial expression, every reaction, every post-match comment is dissected, shared, and turned into content. And here is the thing. Gauff is not fragile. She is incredibly resilient. The fact that she overcame an 11-1 head-to-head deficit against one of the most dominant players in the sport tells you everything about her mental strength. But resilience does not mean invulnerability. No one is invulnerable. And the more we treat athletes as content generators rather than human beings, the more we risk breaking the very qualities we admire in them. Świątek has dealt with her own version of this pressure. She went through the doping controversy in late 2024 and described it as the worst experience of her life, saying it caused tremendous stress and anxiety. She has also been candid about the 2026 season not meeting her expectations. After the Australian Open, she admitted that the results have not been what she would wish for. She lost to Rybakina in the quarterfinals. She lost back-to-back matches at the United Cup, including that 7-game losing streak against Belinda Bencic. She arrived at Indian Wells in March 2026 acknowledging that the opening months of the season have been inconsistent. So when we ask the question, is the Queen in danger? We have to be honest about what we mean by that. If we are talking purely about tennis results, then yes, there are cracks. Gauff has figured out how to beat Świątek consistently. Sabalenka remains the world number 1 and a constant threat. Rybakina has shown she can take down Świątek at the biggest moments. The era of Świątek's unchallenged dominance appears to be over. But if we are talking about something bigger, and I think we should be, then the answer is more complicated. Because the danger is not just that Gauff is winning matches. The danger is in how the modern sports ecosystem treats these women. The danger is in the cameras that never turn off. The danger is in the social media machine that turns private moments into public spectacles. The danger is in the expectation that athletes, especially young women, should perform at the highest level, handle losing with perfect grace, never show too much emotion, never show too little, always be available, always be on. That is the real danger. And it does not just threaten Świątek's position at the top of the rankings. It threatens the well-being of every player in the sport. Let me talk for a moment about what Serena Williams said, because I think it is important. After the racket-smashing video went viral, Williams posted on social media defending Gauff. She wrote, "Passion. Caring. Matters. Nothing wrong with hating to lose." And then she added, with trademark Serena humor, "Now Coco, when you want, I can show you how to demolish in one swipe. Serena style." That response was perfect because it did two things at once. It validated Gauff's emotion. And it normalized it. Serena Williams, the greatest of all time, was essentially saying, "I have been there. This is what competitors do. Stop making it a controversy." And she was right. We have this strange relationship with athletes and emotion. We want them to care passionately about winning, but we do not want to see what passionate caring actually looks like when things go wrong. We celebrate the tears of joy after a championship but shame the tears of frustration after a defeat. We want gladiators, but we also want them to be perfectly composed robots the moment they step off the court. That is not fair. And it is not realistic. And the sooner we, as fans and as a media ecosystem, come to terms with that, the healthier this sport will be. Now let me bring this back to the rivalry itself, and where things might be headed. Because despite everything I have said about pressure and privacy, the tennis itself is genuinely exciting. Gauff is 21. Świątek is 24. They have played each other 16 times already. Think about that. 16 matches, and they are barely into the prime years of their careers. This rivalry could define the next decade of women's tennis the way Federer-Nadal defined the men's game. The fact that it started as a lopsided affair and has now become competitive makes it even more compelling. The greatest rivalries in sports are not born from equals meeting equally. They are born from someone being so far behind that the moment they catch up feels seismic. That is what is happening here. Gauff has found her game. She has found her confidence. She has learned to erase the mental deficit and compete freely. But Świątek is not done. She is 24. She has 6 Grand Slam titles. She is still ranked number 2 in the world. She has been honest about her inconsistent form, but she is also one of the most intelligent and adaptable players on the tour. When Świątek was asked if Gauff's wins bother her, she said no. She said she uses them as information, not as emotional damage. She said she does not spiral. That is a champion's response. That is someone who is going to come back with adjustments. So the question is not really whether the Queen is in danger. The question is whether the chess match between these two is entering its most interesting phase. And I believe it is. Gauff is no longer the nervous challenger. She is a legitimate contender for every title, every time she walks onto the court. But Świątek is not going to hand over her crown without a fight. She is going to evolve, adapt, and find new ways to compete. That is what the great ones do. What makes this rivalry special is not just the tennis. It is the respect. These two have spoken warmly about each other. There is no animosity, no manufactured drama. Świątek congratulated Gauff genuinely after the United Cup loss. Gauff acknowledged Świątek's quality even in victory. When the privacy issue erupted at the Australian Open, Świątek backed Gauff publicly without hesitation. They are competitors, yes, but they are also peers who understand the unique pressure of being at the top. And that brings me to my final thought. Because I think this story matters beyond tennis. We live in an age of total visibility. Everyone is watched. Everyone is recorded. Everyone is judged. For professional athletes, that visibility is magnified to an almost inhuman degree. They cannot lose a match without the world seeing their pain. They cannot have a private moment of frustration without it becoming a meme. They cannot struggle with their form without every armchair analyst questioning their dedication or their mental toughness. And yet, they keep showing up. Gauff keeps showing up. Świątek keeps showing up. They keep competing at the highest level, putting their emotions on display, taking the criticism, absorbing the praise, and somehow finding the strength to do it all again the next week. That is not just athletic excellence. That is extraordinary human resilience. So when we ask, is the Queen in danger? Maybe we should also ask ourselves a different question. Are we, as fans and media consumers, creating an environment where greatness can actually flourish? Or are we slowly making it impossible for these athletes to be both great and human at the same time? This rivalry between Gauff and Świątek has the potential to be one of the defining storylines in women's tennis for years to come. Let us make sure we appreciate it, not just for the winners and losers, but for the courage it takes to step onto that court knowing the entire world is watching and judging every single thing you do. That is the real story here. The scoreboard tells you who won the match. But it does not tell you what it cost. Now, before we wrap up, I want to hear from you. I have 3 questions I would love for you to think about and answer in the comments. Question number 1. Do you think Coco Gauff has genuinely closed the gap with Iga Świątek, or is this winning streak a temporary phase that will shift once Świątek adjusts? Question number 2. Should tournaments limit the number of cameras in off-court player areas? Or is total access just the price of being a professional athlete in the modern age? Question number 3. In your opinion, who will end the 2026 season ranked higher, Gauff or Świątek, and why? Drop your answers in the comments. Let us have a real conversation about this. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this analysis thoughtful and worth your time, please hit the like button, subscribe to Trending Update USA, and turn on that notification bell so you never miss our next deep dive into the stories shaping the world of sports. I am Steffan, and I will see you in the next one.